as Masters of the Universe grew in popularity in the 80s, getting more characters out there for female fans was definitely a priority because almost 40% of sales were going to girls in 1985. And Mattel was like, oh, well, we should take advantage of this. So, creating a female offshoot of the Masters brand, She-Ra Princess of Power, starring Glimmer, okay, not starring Glimmer, starring She-Ra. But while She-Ra will be the representation of the brand in 1980s pop culture, one cannot discount Glimmer, who was more or less She-Ra's BFF and had more screen time on the show than probably any other secondary character. So naturally, fans wanted Glimmer in their Masters of the Universe Classics line, and of course, so did we, because as we've said, and I've said, I was a huge fan of the Princess of Power show. I think I actually liked it more than He-Man and the Masters as far as Filmation is concerned. So yes, getting Glimmer into classics like this was going to be great, especially because more people probably at least recognized her as far as the secondary characters. I mean, come on, we all love Peacock Lady, but most of pop culture really knows the top characters, and at least Glimmer kind of slides into that top category with Cowl and Bo and a few others that were on almost every episode. Much like how Filmation handled the He-Man adaptation, they went with a small core cast where occasionally guest stars would show up. And Glimmer being a core member of that core cast, it was clear why fans wanted her so much in the line. Plus, she also had great visual powers, a really cool color scheme, and naturally she was going to help flesh out that Princess of Power shelf we were all trying to build. And granted, it was going slower than, shall we say, building the vintage He-Man line in classics. And part of that was access to characters, part of that was sales. Okay, a big part of that was sales. The Princess of Power figures didn't sell anywhere as close to the Masters figures. Basically, if it was a Masters figure and it was an A-list, it sold great, and after there, you just went down. But Classics was all about diversity and getting to all these secondary characters, so even though they still weren't selling as well in Classics itself, Glimmer was very important. And which version of her to do is definitely an issue, since the vintage toy probably has more variants than almost any other 80s toy out there. I mean, there's got to be at least 15 plus. But we were actually not even looking at any of them, because from day one with Classics, it was decided not to do dolls for Princess of Power characters. At first, we weren't even sure who we could do, who we'd have access to, but regardless of the characters, and eventually we were able to do all of them, they were all dolls in the 80s because the girls group took over development after the boys group initiated it, but, there's definitely turf when it comes to boys and girls groups at large toy companies, and if, the boys group was going to play in the doll area, the girls group was like, nope, we'll take the lead here. So instead of action figures, we got dolls, but we wanted Classics to be all about action figures, and luckily we had that 87 style guide, which gave us access. So that meant reimagining figures as if they were in the vintage Masters of the Universe line, not the Princess of Power line. How would they have looked? So Glimmer, hypothetically, had she been done in that style, would have probably looked like this. This is a fan custom, but it's a perfect illustration. So this would have been the starting point. So we were using both the 87 style guide, which more or less gave access to the animated look of the characters, which at the time we did not have access to because we didn't have Filmation rights in the beginning of the line, not till about 2012. And that's why we were able to do Glimmer like this and do her in her animation look, because, well, it both fulfilled the need to update an action figure, not a doll, and have access to the Filmation look, which was very different from the toy/doll look. So that's why she winds up looking like that. And I thought she came out great, especially because I'm a big fan of, characters with purple hair. But also, I know that fans were very, very, critical would be, I guess, the appropriate word, of a lot of the female figures in terms of the way the clothing was cut, the way it fell, especially like if they were wearing skirts or shorts, as well as the deco. And the thing is, yes, we would have loved to have had even better deco, but you have to realize that you have costs you have to hit too. Deco is the first thing that raises the cost of a figure. So it's the easiest thing to cut back on, because even with these figures selling at a premium price, we still had our cost target that we had to hit and couldn't go above that. And so the reason females couldn't get full, Cleopatra looks here I mean, makeup is basically a cost issue. It was just too expensive to do that, which is why customs afterwards can, of course, spare no expense. Now, with Glimmer, one thing I did really love was her accessory, because I love when characters come with, energy balls or, crystal balls, that kind of thing, because it's fun and you don't have to pay for tooling because you can purchase these. So, getting Glimmer into Classics checked off, and bio basically available via the Vintage Figures card back. It was so nice when Vintage Figures had text that I could borrow, because writing these was exhausting. It was fun, but it was great when you could just lift text right from the vintage material. Not to mention, her appearances in the mini comics and all of that, as well as now that we had Filmation rights, you could incorporate that if need be. But it meant rewriting all the bios, so pretty much the bios stuck with the original draft that was written before Filmation rights, which is why they usually don't contain too many references to Filmation episodes. Hey, my bandwidth was limited. Now, I've mentioned a few times that the original plan was to reissue all of the main characters in the animated look down the line. And likewise, sort of the reverse of that was the idea that we could then issue all of the Princess of Power figures in their doll look, complete with rooted hair and soft goods and the whole 9 yards, much as a way we would refresh the He-Man characters with animation look. So this would have been a long-term plan to find a way to bring Princess of Power back. Now, while that never happened, because the original figures were done in the Filmation look, you kind of wind up for the Club Grayskull line, you sort of already have your figures. So it kind of worked in reverse in that sense. So while we didn't get the doll look, but hey, maybe something like, Masterverse, which is about all looks and all styles, could do these, POP figures as dolls again if there is enough demand. I know we did get a lot of requests for that, so hey, make it happen, Mattel. That's what a line like Masterverse is all about. All right, so finishing up with POP, or back to it, pretty much every time we did a figure and we checked that one off, the fans would just immediately jump to the next one. In this case, I think Angela was that. So suddenly all the cheer for, we want Glimmer, overnight became, we want Angela. So yes, it was always our goal to get to everything, and hey, who knows what else. POP was a wealth of inspiration for the line. And if we had access to it, we were going to use it in every way possible, for as long as we could keep it up.